What's up, guys? Today we're going to walk through an installation of our newest product, and that's our high clearance Sprinter rear bumper. Now, in contrast to our step bumper, this one is much more high clearance. You gain 3 to 4 inches over the step bumper, hence its name, and it's the same robust aluminum material that the previous bumper has. It's all aluminum, so it's not going to rust. It's nice and light, but it's still really robust, and the mounts themselves are steel, so the strength's there where it's most important. The biggest differentiating factor for this new model is that it's compatible with the 25 to current rear blind spot sensors. Let's get started. When you open the box, you'll have the bumper itself, the 2 mounts, and the hardware. And of course, you'll have our parking sensor housings, which snap right into the parking sensor holes on the face of the bumper. It's fully compatible with all your sensors. Also, I'd like to point out that this is compatible with the factory receiver hitch as well. And if you're missing the step functionality of the step bumper, we also have an additional step that you can buy that is compatible with this bumper or the OEM bumper, and it's also compatible with the receiver hitch. This is a really easy install. There's no drilling and only very minor trimming, and it's probably the fastest bumper product that we have that you can install. I want to point out before we start that as we go through this install process, a couple of the steps will look a little bit different on your van than they do on this one. And that's because this van had our step bumper installed previously. So we had to take that bumper off, source the plastic OEM parts to put back on. And when we install the step bumper, we cut off a little bracket here that houses the trailer wiring. So your van should still have that bracket on it right here, and your trailer plug will still be here. You don't have to mess with it. It can stay right there. We're just not going to address that in this video, so just note that this hitch looks a little bit different. Also, we couldn't source some of the OEM hardware that hold this part on, so some of the bolts are already taken out, but I'll address that as we go through it step by step. Otherwise, this is going to be a really similar process to what you have in front of you. First step is getting this center section of the OEM plastic out of our way. The end caps get to stay, so we're just worried about removing the center section. And like I mentioned, I don't have all the hardware for this OEM piece, but you will. So you're going to take out these 3 upper screws or bolts. There are 2 plastic retainer clips on some tabs, kind of one on each side. And then there's a little interlocking plastic tab on the end, on each end. So you can use a little trim tool, pull all those loose. And then we're going to be clear to cut kind of the little inner edge of this corner cap. So getting all that loose, we're about ready to take this off, but it's still tabbed in. So I'm just going to kind of push it out of my way a little bit so I have room to work. And we're going to be trimming right along the inner edge here. So it makes it really nice. You don't have to worry about marking it. You can just follow it with your blade. My favorite tool for this job is one of these. Just one word of caution. There is a wiring harness that runs along here for the sensors, so don't plunge your blade too deep. If that worries you, feel free to take this whole thing all the way apart and disassemble it manually, but that's a lot more work, and in my experience, this is going to net the same product a lot more quickly, and the wiring harness is far enough in there where you would only hit it if you plunge the blade really deep. So we're just going to go real shallow on our cut. Your van may or may not have these awesome shocks. They're going to be a little bit in the way for the upper portion, but we'll be able to get around it. Most vans won't have these. So I'm just going to pick a spot and cut both directions all the way around on this line. I'm going to go ahead and also take out these upper screws. It's going to make it easier to get that last little bit of plastic trimmed without rubbing the blade into the body. Okay, and we'll just let that hang. It still has the wiring harness running through it, and we'll do the same cut on the other side. Now, we'll have an opportunity to clean up that cut in just a minute, but for now I'm just trying to get this main piece out of our way. These parking sensors are held into their housings by these little tabs. I'm going to be a little extreme just to show you. You don't have to bend them this far, and they're probably not reusable if you do what I'm doing. These little tabs bend out of the way to expose the clips on the sensor. You can push it out from the front at that point. So they just kind of spring out while you push them inwards. Do note which way they're facing. So on this van, the pigtail part of the sensor is facing inwards. So this one's inward, this one's facing in towards the center, and then again on the driver's side, there the pigtail is facing towards the center. So that'll be important when you put it back together. And with that out of there, you should be able to toss this piece. So now come back and make sure you like your cut. You can clean it up with a piece of sandpaper, a sanding block, the flat edge of a blade. We just want that to be a nice, straight, smooth cut with no fringe hanging on it. These are the mount brackets, and the left one and the right one look very similar. So the way to tell them apart is this little bump out part. This goes towards the front of the vehicle. So this is going to be the driver's side mount. We've already taken the hitch bolts out because we had a different bumper on. But what I like to do are the bolts that go through the hitch. There's 4 bolts that go through the hitch on each frame rail. I like to take them out one at a time and turn them around so that they're sticking out to the outside of the frame rail. That way you almost have these 4 studs sticking out that you can just slide this on. So I've already done that, and I recommend you just use your factory bolts and do the same thing. The factory bolts are going to be an 18 millimeter. Ours here are just a little bit bigger, but same thing applies. And then you'll just slide this bracket over the bolts, and we're just going to get those finger tight. We won't tighten those all the way down. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. The actual installation of the bumper is really straightforward, and it's also really easy because these mount faces are going to rest underneath the mounts that we just installed, and the bottom of the bumper is going to set on top of the hitch, so it's going to be kind of wedged in there for a minute in a way that it can't fall. So we're going to use that to our advantage and put the sensors in the housings. So I'm just going to kind of set the bottom back edge of the bumper on top of the hitch. And we're going to let it balance there for a minute. And we'll get our wiring harness guided into the inside of the bumper. And we're going to snap the sensors into their proper sensor holes in the right orientation, which in this case was all pigtails pointing to the middle. So we'll just line that up and it will snap in just like they did in the factory housings. Now we'll just guide this in the rest of the way. Now it's really locked in there and it's not going to go anywhere, and we'll grab our bolts. All right, so we're going to install these from the bottom up so it looks clean. And again, we'll just get these kind of finger tight. No need to tighten them all down until we're adjusting everything. So we've got a bolt with a flat washer, and we'll add a flat washer to the top of the stack, then a lock washer, and then a nut. We'll do this for all 4 of these holes, and then we'll repeat on the other side. Now it's time to get it adjusted. The first thing we'll adjust is the fore and aft adjustment and the left and right. So left and right is easy. You just want to get it centered. Also, I left these 2 screws loose on the end caps so that I could pull each one in and close this gap a little bit. So I like my left and right. Fore and aft, really the only consideration, I like it as flush as possible, but if I push it too far in, you can kind of see this gap into the void there. So I don't want it so far in that you can see that reveal. So I'm gonna go for something about like this. This is going to be up to you as the installer and what you think looks best. For us today, I'm going to do this and also pull these in while I tighten them down. So the reason we did those 2 specific adjustments first is because that's what's controlled by the mounting plates that are horizontal like this. So we'll get it just where we want it, we'll tighten those down, and then we'll be able to use the frame bolts to adjust any rotation that we may need, and a little bit more up and down adjustment. Okay, now we're going to tighten down these 4 bolts on each side, and I'm going to kind of double check that my adjustment didn't change in the process each time. The bolt head is a 5/8, and the nut on the top side is an 11/16. So again, I'm going to tighten 1 or 2 of these down on each side and then make sure that my adjustment's still good. This is a good point before you tighten down any more bolts to make sure that your height adjustment's good. That's what we're going to tighten down next. Also, this is the point where you want to make sure very carefully that your door's shut. Yeah, we've got lots of clearance there. The other thing I'm looking for is that this gap here looks pretty consistent. How high or low you want it is really up to you. I like it to where it's pretty much on it. I think it looks really clean, but you wouldn't want it tight here and gapped back here or vice versa. So honestly, right now, the way I have it, it flows really well. So I'm gonna tighten it down right where it is, assuming I like the other side. And that wraps it up. As always, go back through and double check that all your bolts are tight. Any wiring connections that you unplugged, make sure they're plugged in, and double check that all your gaps are good. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at roambuilt.com. Thanks for watching.